Hello and welcome to My Fusion Helper. My name is Troy Broussard, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about how to use Timezone Triggers in your marketing. This is an incredibly powerful feature, and this video will be a little bit longer than normal because I'm going to go through a couple of different examples. I really want to make sure that you fully understand the power of this and the simplicity of how to use it as well. So in this video I'm going to really kind of walk through how to set it up, and that's pretty easy. There's just one screen of configuration, so I'm going to kind of walk through that and show you the application, the setup, and also how it ties in with one of our other helpers called the IP redirects. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and you can watch the other video on the IP redirect feature as well. And then we're going to dive into Infusionsoft and show you a couple of different campaign examples. And then lastly, we're just going to talk about some samples, and I've got a cheat sheet for you as well that will be useful here in this video. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing that we need to do is go ahead and create the helper. Now I'm in our demo logged in helper here, and I've already logged in, and we're going to go in here and create a new helper, and we can just type in time and it'll go right to the Timezone Triggers here, and then we can give it a name. So I'm going to do Timezone Triggers demo. That looks good. So we'll do that and then click configure, and that'll bring this in. Now, the Timezone triggers are set up so that you just pick the local time of when you want to send the email. So when do you want it to be delivered in that user's local time? That's what you're setting here. So let's just say that I want this to go out on Tuesday, and so if I record this, I'm setting this up for Tuesday at 8 a.m., then you can see that's how it would do, and it gives you this message here that's going to run on Tuesday the 29th. Now, I happen to be recording this on a Sunday, and if I hit, Sunday, then it's going to tell me this isn't going to go until next Sunday, the 3rd. Or if I click Saturday, it's going to tell me, hey, this isn't going to go until next Saturday, almost a week from now on the 2nd. So this gives you kind of a visual indicator as well. Now, when you set these times, you can do it this way and just pick a quick, common times, or you can do it and adjust it down to the minute like this if you like as well. Totally up to you, and you can toggle this between AM and PM. Okay, so let's just go back to the example, and we'll just say I'm going to do it at 8, and we'll do 8:05 a.m. on Tuesday. Now, there's a couple of things that we can do as well when we're sending out this time zone based email. We can update the contact with their latitude and longitude information. We can update the contact with the time zone that they're in, and we can also update the contact with the time zone offset in hours from Greenwich Mean Time. So it's really up to you which of those you do or don't use. You don't have to do any of them, but I do recommend that you pick one that you use as your base. And you can also do this with the IP redirect feature, where we have the ability to pull all this information and store it into custom fields. And I know that custom fields are precious, so you may not want to do this. And latitude and longitude, you may be asking, what's the purpose of that? But using that data can be very powerful, because we can then integrate with Google Sheets, with our Google Sheets helper, and pull that data real time into Google Sheets and provide a visual map of where people are located, where your customers are located, where your leads are located, based on that latitude and longitude information. For certain businesses, that can be very, very powerful, especially at road shows and displays where you might want to have a monitor on display showing your geographic influence or something to that nature. Now, that's why we include it. But you can also select the time zone, and you can select the time zone offset. Now, the difference is, I'm going to show you a cheat sheet for this later in the video here, but the time zone will be stored in the PHP-based textual time zone representation. So it'll be like America/Los_Angeles. So America/Los Angeles, right? Where that'll tell you the Pacific time zone. So they use a set of lookups in that, and that will store a text-based time zone code that you can use in Decision Diamond branching logic inside your campaign builder if you like. The other option is to use the offset in hours from GMT time, and this will just store a numeric value like +5 or -5 or -8 or whatever the correct offset happens to be for that particular time zone. Now, the question is, how does it really get this time zone information? Okay, so let's cover this. I'm going to go ahead and create helper, and we'll just select for this, we'll say Latin longitude, and then for time zone, we'll say we're going to store that in the time zone offset, and then store that, time zone, and then this one in the offset, and we'll go ahead and create the helper. Now, the way that this works is that this time zone data is calculated off of a couple of different things. First of all, it's going to look if it has existing data already stored in those custom fields, and it'll use that. So if it already has the time zone data set in there, then that's what it'll use. The second thing it's going to do then, if it's blank, so the very first time you use it, is it's going to look at the billing address and customer information if it has that. Okay, and if it has that, that will be used. And it's going to go from address 1, address 2, address 3, and kind of cycle through those in order of priority until it finds the address that it has some time zone information that it can pull up for. So that's the second thing. The other thing that it'll do is it'll use the data that's already in the contact from the IP redirects as well. Now, here's kind of the beauty of this. If you're using the IP redirects to set that data, even if you're not storing it in custom fields, we're storing it internally, and we will pull that in this time zones triggers. So the beauty here is that even if you don't want to use the custom fields, if you're using the IP redirects consistently, like right after somebody opts in, which is our recommendation, to gather that data right at the opt-in when they first join your list, well, if you're doing that, even if you're not storing it in custom fields, we're storing it internally, and we can still use that in the time zone triggers. So it's really critical that you integrate this intelligently with the IP redirect feature and use these two in conjunction with one another so that you get the most robust data in the system possible. Now, I want to show you a couple of links here and how they work so that you understand this. This is just the standard HTTP post link for invoking the triggers, and we'll talk about that in just a second as I show how to set it up inside of Infusionsoft. But I want to talk about these goals for just a second. Now, we fire off two goals when this trigger hits for the time zone. The first is a time zone trigger goal, and the second is a time zone trigger failed goal. Now, I want to be really clear here. When we say it failed, it doesn't mean that the email's not going out to this person. It just means that we didn't have any time zone data for that person, and therefore they're going to be sent the email at the default time for your application. So you can start using this today, and even if you had no time zone data information, it's not going to hurt anything because it would send out at your normal broadcast time for your time zone for your application. So if your application is set to Eastern time zone, then that's what it's going to send out. Okay. The reason that we put this as a fail and the goal and the failure goal is because we want you to be able to see numerically, the percentage of people that have time zone data versus not in your database as you're executing this. So this way you have a visual indicator. You'll be able to see how many of those goals fire off and know how well your data is growing in terms of time zone data. Okay, so that's really the only purpose for this. So I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear to you that it's still going to work either way, but one of them is going to be goal-based for the time zone, and one of them is just going to be for the default time zone. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into Infusionsoft and talk about this. Now, inside of Infusionsoft, there's a couple of different ways that we could do this, and I'm going to show you method one, which is what many people have had to resort to in the past. And, you still may choose to do this. And if you do method one, you don't actually need the time zone trigger itself. You could just do it through the IP redirects and then some logic in your campaign. Okay, so you may ask, well, why am I showing you this in the Timezone Triggers video? Well, the reason is because it still comes to the same solution of being able to send out email based on time zones. And so I know that's the greater problem that we're trying to solve. So I want to make sure and show you how to do that and what many people are doing in their business right now. And that is they're invoking a campaign and they're branching off of a custom field where they have stored the time zone information. Now, if we go look at that, I'll show you as an example here. Let's just say that I just did 2 time zones here for visual reasons on the screen, but let's say we had Eastern time zone, which the PHP way that that's going to be stored is America/New_York. And then let's say we had Pacific time zone, which would be America/Los Angeles, okay, stored that way. So we could branch off of that custom field. And then if they're in Eastern, we could just go on through because we're in the Eastern time zone, let's say. And let's say if they're Pacific, we want it to wait 3 hours before it sends out the email. And then we can just put them into the regular marketing sequence right here. Now, this would assume that you live in the East Coast and your app is on the East Coast time zone. And so let's say you wanted to send it at 8 a.m. This would go right through, and this one would wait 3 hours so that it's 8 a.m. on the West Coast. Okay, so this is an example that many people are doing this right now. They're doing primarily U.S. based, and so they just have the 3 or 4 main time zones here in the U.S. and set that up, and then they just do branching logic based on the time zone data that they store. Now, this data can be stored directly from the IP redirects, this America, New York, America, Los Angeles, and there's several of them. And I'll show you a cheat sheet for that in just a minute so that you have that for the United States. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, and honestly, this is more work, the best way to do it is method 2. And this is actually using our Timezone triggers, okay? So this is what this API goal is all about. And here we'd start somebody into some campaign and we'd send them an HTTP post for the Timezone triggers to invoke that Timezone trigger. And we'd just copy and paste that in the same way we would do anyway. So we would grab from here and we would just copy this link and then we would just paste it right into here, okay? And that would set it up. And so that creates the post that invokes our trigger. Now, we're going to go through there and use a time zone logic, calculate the time zone, and then delay to the appropriate time before firing this event. Now, notice I put 2 events here. I put the Timezone trigger event and the Timezone trigger failed event. Either one of those events both connect through to the marketing sequence. So this is how you should do it as well. You should have both of these events and they should both map through. Okay, the only difference is going to be that when I run this, I can see how many people I have time zone data for and how many people I don't have time zone data for. And so this just gives me a running count of the results so that I can see how well my time zone data is growing inside of my contact database. Okay, that's the reason for this. Either one of these will trigger at the appropriate time, and then here you would just have your email going out. Now, even you can notice I've got the beta email in here with the new responsive email format inside of the campaign builder now. So this is really slick. But you can see this is the way that it would work. So think of it as like a custom timer. That's the way to really think of this. You invoke it here. Okay, and then it's a custom timer, you're waiting for it to fire, and it's going to trigger off a goal for that person at the right time for their time zone, and then it's going to move on through, and when that goal fires, now we can go ahead and send out the email. So that's all there really is to this, and it's fairly straightforward. I know I went into a lot of detail, but at the end of the day, it's important that you just think of this as like a delay timer. That's really the way it works. You set it up inside of MyFusion Helper for the time that you want it to delay to, and then just simply put that out. All right, so I promised you a time zone cheat sheet, and so this is for the United States, but I'm also putting a link here for myfoo.me/timezones. If you go to that link, that will take you to a page with PHP documentation on all the different international time zones as well. But these are the common ones that most people will use here in the United States. So I wanted to go ahead and give you that cheat sheet. And you can see that although it uses like New York for Eastern, it's not going to have Florida, it's not going to have Orlando, it's not going to have all the different places in the Eastern time zone listed like that. It just normalizes it all, and Eastern time zone becomes America/New York. Okay, so those are just the way that it's done for consistency, and you'll have that reference here. So I wanted to provide that reference to you so that if you're hard coding anything based off of time zone, you'll do this. You can also generate reports as you run the IP redirect and build up these time zones in your contacts and store that data in a contact custom field. You'll be able to report on that directly through just a simple contact search report. All right, so let's talk about some of the examples and uses for this. And kind of the first thing is just getting some segmenting data about your list by time zone, really understanding where your list resides, where they live, where they're at, where they're geographically dispersed. And being able to do that is very simple and easy through incorporating this time zone data. Now, the other thing you're going to be able to do, obviously, is email contacts in their local time. There's not a whole heck of a lot of examples to talk about here because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? It's about getting the email to the person at their time. So in the past, with Infusionsoft, you've had to try to select a time that works across various time zones, and it's marginally effective, right? So it's probably a little too late on the East Coast, and it's a little too early on the West Coast, and you just pick this compromised time. But now you have the ability to truly email contacts in their time zone and deliver the email to them at the right time, where you'll have the best deliverability and best impact from the knowledge that you have about your list. So hopefully this will be a big help for you. And if you have any questions, as always, reach us on the help desk at help@myfusionsolutions.com. Take care.